Good evening, everyone. I want to thank you for being here tonight and welcome you to our career seminar, Turn Job Interviews into Offers, featuring Rob Hellman. In tonight's seminar, we're going to cover field-tested strategies and techniques that will boost your likelihood of acing the interview. In the process, we'll dispel many common myths about the interview process that often cause problems for job seekers. So we'll cover a strategic approach to interviewing that will put you ahead of the competition, how to handle salary questions and other questions that you're likely to hear, what to do when they ask you about your weaknesses, the 3 things companies look for in a candidate and how to prepare, the 3 questions you must ask to ensure the interview success, and finally how to turn no into yes. So we're pleased to bring you opportunities like tonight's program, as well as other opportunities in networking, in social gatherings, community service activities, and cultural outings and reunions. Just some upcoming events on the calendar for you to look out for. On June 21st is our next career seminar. Adam Mayer from the Center for Career Services is going to do a program on mock interviewing, and that'll occur here. So the invite will be coming out shortly, so check your email. Also in June, we're going to do a Red Hawk Summer Happy Hour right here in Montclair, and we'll keep you posted on that. And Rob will be coming back on July 19th to do a program on the 6 keys to succeeding in your new or current job. So just a couple things to look out for, many more, so check out our calendar of events on the web. Do we have any current seniors in the room? I know we had some students signed up. Oh, there you go. Well, congratulations. So you'll be graduating soon. Just want to mention that, always remember that your connection to the university lasts a lifetime. So whether you're just graduating this year or you graduated 50 years ago or somewhere in between, you're always connected to this university. And one of the many ways for you to stay connected is through our online community, Montclair Connect. And I'm sure many of you are signed on there. But just want to spend a couple minutes talking about the tools that are available to you on there. It's a great resource for you. There's an online directory, so you can search for alumni using different search parameters. So you can search for alumni who graduated in a specific year or who are living in a certain area. There's also a great career area on there. There's a career advisory network where you can search for folks who have offered to serve as career mentors, or you can sign up to be a career mentor yourself. You also have the ability to post your resume and search for resumes on there and search for jobs. A couple of the other tools that I'd like to mention, you can learn about on-campus and off-campus events and also register for all of your events on there. You have the ability to post class notes, so to share information with your classmates, and also photos. We also post photo galleries of all our events and activities, so if you want to check out photos from an event you've been at or one that you've missed, you can go on and check that out. And there's affinity groups, so for instance, we have an attorney alumni network. We have the broadcasting department affinity group, so you can go on there and search for different groups that you have an affinity towards. You have a couple handouts on your seat. You have a copy of the presentation for tonight, a blue sheet that is a feedback form. So your feedback's really important to us. If you can take a few minutes at the end of the program to just fill that out, that would be great. And also a handout from the Center for Career Services. That's the yellow one. And Adam Mayer in a minute or so will come up and talk a little bit about the services available to you through the Center for Career Services. So I'm delighted to introduce to you tonight's speaker. Rob Hellman is a certified 5 O'Clock Club career coach, a vice president at the club, and a professor at New York University. He's also the author of the book, Your Social Media Job Search. The 5 O'Clock Club is a national outplacement and career counseling network with certified career counselors across the United States. Rob has helped hundreds of clients in diverse industries and professions to define and reach their job search and on-the-job goals. In addition to his private coaching practice, Rob's career-related insights and commentary have appeared in media outlets such as New York Times, Forbes, The Washington Post, Money Magazine, CNBC, ABC News, and Fox News, to name a few. He combines his more than 20 years in corporate marketing at companies such as American Express and JP Morgan with his 5 O'Clock Club training to help people market themselves in their careers. So before I bring up Rob, I'll introduce to you Adam Mayer. He's the Director of Career Counseling in the Center for Career Services and Cooperative Education. And he'll say a few words about the benefits and services available to you through their area. Thanks.
Thanks, Jenna. Yeah, we have a long title for our office. I usually have to take a deep breath before I say it, but in any event, I won't take up much time because Rob's got a fantastic presentation, and those of you who have been here before, you know you're in good hands with Rob. But briefly, just as a follow-up to some of the services that we offer, we do offer career counseling to alumni. There's no limit to the number of times you can come back. The door never closes. And in fact, I see a couple familiar faces. So I just want to say that at the outset. In addition to that, I mean, we can do resume critiques. We can do that virtually. We now have iPads. So if you wanted to do an appointment via a FaceTime, that's possible. If you can't get to the office and you want to use Skype, you want to use something along those lines, we want to make sure the door is open, whether it's the physical door or the virtual door, so you guys can come back. That having been said, and this might put me out of a job, the level of support services online through our website is incredible. There's self-assessment, there's resume writing tools, one of which is called Optimal Resume. It's criminal how easy it is to create a web-based resume through this program. So that's just a little bit of what we offer there online. So I implore you guys to take advantage of our services for sure, and I think you're in for a great program. Okay, thank you. Good, Rob's here for you.
Hey, thanks, Adam. All right. And thank you, and thanks, Jenna, for that nice introduction. So yeah, we're going to be talking about interviewing, how to turn interviews into offers. So Jenna already gave me a really wonderful introduction. I just want to add a little bit to it just so you can essentially know why you should listen to me. So the 5 O'Clock Club is a very powerful, field-tested, research-based job search methodology. And I use it every day to help my clients as well as do the other career coaches at the 5 O'Clock Club. And we talk all the time, see what's working, what's not working, so I kind of build on that. Also, what I'm sharing with you is informed by the experiences I have with my clients every day in my private practice. Plus, I have 20 years of experience in the corporate world. I was just where you are right now for a long time, interviewing, trying to get interviewed, ace the interviews, and I also interviewed candidates too. So having that experience and being on that other side helps inform what I'm sharing with you as well. So that's basically it. And the last thing I just want to mention before we dive into the details is if you want these, well, you have the slides, you have the little slides. If you want the full presentation online emailed to you, you can fill out my sign-up sheet and I will send it to you. And you'll also be on my list for roughly once a month job search tips. It's actually probably less than that. It's really when I have time to get to it. I've heard they're pretty useful. And anyway, so you can fill out that sign-up sheet afterwards, and I will email you the slides. So, okay, and very last thing. Let's make it, a conversation, a discussion. I want to make sure you're getting this stuff, so feel free to ask questions, interrupt, hopefully politely, and I want to make sure, feel free to interact with me, okay? And if we need to move on because of time, I'll just let you know. Okay, so first I want to start off by asking you a question, okay? True or false, the hiring decision is made within the first minute of the interview.
Yes.
True. Do I hear any falses? False. Any other thoughts? Something other than true or false? Maybe. Okay, I got a few trues, a few falses, one maybe. So the answer is false. Why is it false? It's because I have seen over and over again a no turn into a yes based on what happens after the interview. What do you do in the follow-up? It can change the whole game. Okay? Or even what you do late in the interview. Now, that's not to say that if you're completely off, if like you're dressed totally inappropriately, and you say, there's something really off-putting about you, yeah, the hiring decision may be made in that first minute, okay? But other than those extreme cases, you've got plenty of opportunity to change a first impression, okay? So, and we're going to talk about how you do that. It's going to be a big part of tonight's conversation, tonight's presentation. Okay, so this is how we're going to approach this topic. we're going to start off with number one. We're going to start off with the strategy. You need to have a sound strategy for approaching the interview, and I want you to understand what that is, and everything's going to flow from that strategy that we're going to discuss. The second thing we're going to talk about is how you should prepare. Thirdly, we're going to talk about what do you do when you're at the interview, and lastly, we're going to talk about how do you follow up. And you're noticing that all these four things point to the goal, which is to get the next meeting. It's not to get the job. Why do I say that? Two reasons. One, if you're focused on getting the job in the interview, I want to get this job, I want to get this job, often you'll make mistakes, you'll close too soon. What that means in practice is maybe you'll start talking about salary too early, or other things you shouldn't be talking about. Okay? Secondly, you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself. I want to get this. Everything is riding on me getting this job. This meeting is going to determine whether I get this job or not. Maybe not. Maybe you have other meetings. In fact, a lot of these days, a lot of jobs, when you're applying and you're interviewing, it's more than one meeting, right? So I don't put so much pressure on yourself. Just keep trying to get the next meeting. If you're continuing to get the next meeting, ultimately you'll get the job offer. That's how I would think about it. Okay? So that's the big picture. That's how we're going to approach this presentation. And now let's get into some of the details of the strategy. The strategy I'm going to share with you, the big picture mindset is to be a consultant. Anybody here ever do any consulting? Okay, so one person. Anyone else? Okay, two. I don't know. So anyway, well, as you may know then, what I'm going to say might ring true to you since you've done some consulting. Now, isn't it like when you're going to go to a meeting to try to get some business, you've kind of prepared, you've done some research, and maybe you have a hypothesis about what they might need. You go in there a little prepared, and then you have questions to confirm that hypothesis. You might take notes. You try to understand what their issues are and then show them how you can help them with those issues. Take some notes. Maybe you'll write a proposal afterwards. You'll say, here's what I heard you say. Here are my ideas for how I might be able to help you. Isn't that kind of what a consultant typically does? That's what you want to do in every interview setting. Every time you go to an interview, you want to put on that consultant mindset. You want to be, and that really what that means is you want to say things like you want to focus on what their issues are and then show them how you can help them using specific examples. That's what a consultant does. You want to understand what their issues are and then show them how you can help them using specific examples. Okay? So you might say something like, oh, I helped my prior employer with a similar issue, for example, and then give an example. Okay? If you are doing that, you are winning the game. If you are understanding their issues and then showing them how you can help them with their issues using specific examples, very important, you can't do any better. If you're doing anything else, like talking too much about, hey, we both went to the same school, or like too long, our hometown, or something not relevant, or maybe talking too much about why you got laid off or anything, you're just either hurting yourself or you're wasting time. This is what you need to focus on. Okay? It's not about memorizing the answers to every possible question they could ask and then asking 3 of your own at the end. It's not about that. That's probably what a lot of you do. That's what I used to do. I'm going to get the books on how to answer every possible interview question anyone ever thought of, and I'm going to memorize all the answers. No, don't. It's besides the point. Okay? What you want to do instead is be strategic and say, my goal is to have a discussion with them about their issues and how I can help them using specific examples, which implies that you have a lot of control in the interview process. You have a lot of control in most interviews to steer the conversation, so you'll be talking about this. And you'll be helping yourself and them. That's what they want to know too, how you can help them. So what you don't want to do is think, please hire me and I'll memorize the answers to every possible question. That's not the mindset you want to go into. So basically, when you're being a consultant, what you're thinking about is you're problem solving on the same side of the table as they are. You're having a dialogue with them. You're not just answering their questions. You're aiming for a conversation about their issues. And research beforehand, like any consultant would tell you, is key. You've got to do your homework and be prepared. Right? If you don't prepare, then you're essentially preparing to fail. I think that was a quote from Ben Franklin. I probably didn't quote it properly, but he said something like that. So you got to be prepared, and research is key. And what you could do is you could pretend you're there just to help them. That's something that helps a lot of people going into an interview who get a little bit nervous. Forget about, I want this job, I hope I make a good impression, I hope I answer the questions properly. Forget about that. Just think about, you know what, I'm there just to help them. And that, if you can take that mindset, you'll be a little bit more relaxed. And you know what? Sometimes you'll find you can't help them. You'll have that conversation, and you'll say, you know what, I'm not the right fit. That's actually okay, because they are now in your network. If you have a good rapport with somebody that you are interviewing with, if it doesn't work out, you can both say, you know what, it's not quite a fit. You can say, listen, do you know anybody else in the organization who could use my skills? In fact, I had a client just recently who did exactly that. He found out that it was through this kind of approach that it was clear that there was a mismatch in the skills. So they didn't offer him the job. So he called them up and he said, well, is anybody else in the company? It was a big Fortune 500 company. Anybody else could use my skills? So the hiring manager said, yes, I'm going to pass on your resume. You should contact this person. So he had an interview with somebody else. They turned him down. Again, it wasn't quite a fit. So he did the same thing. Anyone else could use it. Yeah, you should talk to this other person. That happened 2 more times. On the 4th time, he got an offer and he accepted. Okay? So these people are in your network. It's not the worst thing in the world if you have a good interview, but that you don't make it, maybe you're number 2 or 3, or it's just not quite a fit. They are in your network. You should keep in touch with them. You should ask them, who else could use my skills, or do you know any other companies that they might be interested in? So just go in there with the mindset you're on the same side of the table as them, and you're there just to help them. Just take that mindset. You'll feel better. And you'll come across better. And what you'll be doing when you do that is you'll be naturally focused on their number 1 question. So anything they're asking you is really going to fall into one of 3 buckets. It's going to fall into number 1. What can you do for me? Everybody wants to know, how can you help me? That's the number 1 question. Number 2, why do you want to work here? Meaning, are you going to leave in 6 months? They all want to know you're going to stick around. And number 3, will you fit in? Can I work with you? Will you fit in? Will other people be able to work with you? Will you be able to be part of the team and all that, right? So no matter what they're asking you, what are your greatest strengths, what are your greatest weaknesses, whatever, they're trying to get at one of these 3 things. So when you're preparing, you want to think about these 3 things. Okay? So that's pretty much the strategy. The next thing we're going to talk about is preparation. What do you all think of the strategy? Does this make sense to you? Yeah. Anybody have any questions about it or any issues about it? Okay? Well, if you do, you can ask me later. Feel free to interrupt. Okay? And by the way, I hope you all have pens, because I'm going to ask you to do an exercise in a little bit. Okay? So, all right. So, preparation. Okay? These are the things we're going to cover in subsequent slides. But I want you to understand this is what you need to do to prepare. First off, you want to address up front the thing that you're afraid they're going to bring up, or that you're concerned they may bring up and you don't have a good answer for. Don't put it off. Deal with it before you go into the interview and have a good answer. Practice it. Okay? And that could be, a lot of times, commonly it's things like, I moved around a lot. They might ask me, how come you moved around a lot? Or maybe, why is there this big gap in your resume? What have you been doing the last 4 years? Or why were you let go? Or why did you leave? Why are you looking for another job? Those are areas sometimes people are uncomfortable about answering those things. You've got to come up with a good answer before you go into the interview. Okay? And actually, I want to practice. Does anybody want to share something they're afraid, they're uncomfortable with when an interviewer brings it up? And let's try to address it right now. Does anybody have anything?
The gaps in my employment. The gaps in my employment. You know?
Okay, so you have a gap in your employment. So give me an example of the gap.
Well, I was in the professional service group for so long, and they told us not to settle for any job, just to get something within our field. So we just kept going to this PSG group. And
but what does it have to do with
it
it?
Being like years and years in my job search, you know.
So you have a gap. How long was your gap?
Years.
Okay. Were you doing anything that could relate it to your field during that time?
Sub-teaching, only sub-teaching.
Right. Well, the idea behind it, and all right, so that's one example. Does anybody have another example? I'm going to show you to do both. Yes.
I was downsized in 2005, and since then all my jobs have been contract work, type work. And the question I'm starting to get now is, why are you do you prefer contracting, or why have you been contracting?
Okay.
I feel like there's, is there something to be ashamed of saying, well, I haven't found anything permanent, everything out there is outsourced.
So here's what you do. Okay, so for your situation and your situation, this is essentially what you would say. This is how you would handle it. You would say something like, first of all, you've done a lot of contract and temp work. Sometimes on your resume, you can group it all together. You can make it like one job. Call yourself, make it your company. Whatever your name is, what is your name?
Okay.
Gabe? Gabe, whatever your last name is, consulting or something like that. And you've done lots of different jobs as a consultant. I don't know if you can do that, but that's one option for you. Some people do that, and now it's less like you're jumping around. It's more like this is just what you've done for a while. Okay? So you might say, well, you know what? I want to do contract. I've done consulting. I've worked for lots of different people. I want to do that. I want to have that flexibility for a while, to be able to work and then not work for some personal reason. Maybe I could be able, but you know what? I'm really ready now to go back into a full-time, long-term opportunity where I can really grow with the company. And I'm really excited to be talking to you now because you're exactly the type of company that I think I can really make a home in, that I can really grow in. And I wanted to ask you about some of the things that I saw in an article I was reading or on your website. It's basically what we've just done. If you spent about 20 seconds addressing the gap issue, and you now just turned it around and focused it back on them, you basically changed the subject. Okay? So that's what you want to do. When you get a difficult question that you're not thrilled with, you don't have maybe necessarily the best answer it briefly. And then change the subject. Turn it back to them and talk about them. Talk about how you can help them or why you want to work there. In this case, I was starting to show you, like, we were trying to focus on why you want to work there. Okay? So that's the best advice I could give you. When you're dealing with something uncomfortable, answer it briefly. In your case, maybe summarize, say, you can try to maybe package everything as one job, like consulting, my consulting company, right? But then answer briefly, say, and now I'm ready to go back full-time. You can see my prior history in 2005. I was in companies long-term. I'm ready to do that again. And I'm very excited to be talking to you. And now you're changing the subject. You're asking them questions. Do you get that? Do people understand that? Yeah. So the idea, this is like, think of it like a politician would do this. Right? You got to be business savvy. That's what we're talking about here. They want that. They want that. They want to get this hiring process over with. They want to hire somebody. Make it easy for them to do that. Don't dwell on the stuff that you're uncomfortable with. If you're uncomfortable with it, the tendency is, it's my tendency too, to talk too much. Right? You go on and on about the thing you're uncomfortable with. You start stammering, whatever. My tendency is to do the same thing. I'm saying consciously, play the game. Meaning, be brief, address it, and then talk about them. Talk about how you can help them and why you want to work there. That's how you do it, okay? That's the big approach. Anyway, let's talk about other things. Number 2, questions you want to ask based on your hypothesis. I'm going to cover that in later slides, but be aware we're going to get into that. You have to come up with questions that you want to ask beforehand, not just questions to show how smart you are. It's real questions to understand about what their issues are so you can show them how you can help them. That's what you want to do. Okay? And the hypothesis is going to be very important too. We're going to talk about that in the next slide. 2 or 3 accomplishments that you want to talk about, that's going to be a big part of this presentation. What accomplishments do you want them to know about in your interview? And how do you talk about these accomplishments? Stories. We're talking about stories about your experience. We're going to cover that in later slides. Your pitch, we're going to cover that in later slides. You have to have, we call it at the 5 o'clock club, your 2-minute pitch. Some people call it the elevator speech. You've probably heard that, right? You have to, it's great to have a concise statement about how you can help an organization that is well rehearsed. We're going to talk about that. And lastly, why you want to work there. You want to be ready with that as well. So let's get into some of these things in more detail, how you prepare in all these areas. The hypothesis. In other words, for you to come up with good questions ahead of time, you got to think about what might they be, their issues might be. You got to do some research. And then you got to think about the company, what you know about the company and the department. And you got to form a hypothesis. Doesn't mean your hypothesis is right. You can say, I think they need someone to help us who understands the overseas market in Asia and someone has a lot of expertise in that. Maybe you're wrong. Maybe they don't need that. But think about it and ask an intelligent question. What are your plans for expansion in Asia? Oh, yeah, well, really, it's a big thing for us. Oh, do you have people that know that understand those markets? Well, no, that's one of the areas we need help in. Say, well, I have that experience. So this is how you ask intelligent questions. Or they might say, we don't care about Asia. We care about Latin America. Oh, now you can start asking about that, right? So think ahead, have a hypothesis about what their issues are, and then ask them questions to confirm or disprove that hypothesis. That way you're asking the right questions. You're asking intelligent questions that are getting right to the heart of what their issues are. Do people understand this? Does that make sense to people? Do you have any questions on this? Yes?
I do. I'm looking for jobs in higher education and college campuses, and one of the things I'm noticing is that the people who are on the search committee can be from different departments, and HR is not always happy to share who's on the search committee, so it's hard to do some of this research. So I'm wondering how to approach that if you have a challenge getting this type of information.
So have you tried to ask HR who's on the search committee? They don't want to share it with you?
I've like one or two places, when they say, oh, I'm just trying to find this, that, and they're like, no, we don't share. They get so many applications, they don't want to be bombarded, and they don't want these people to be bothered, so you have to go through channels.
So this is going to get to a point we're going to talk about in a couple of slides, but I want to start to address it now. So first off, you should find out who you're going to interview with. And usually you can. Even I've heard even in search committees, usually you can get the names of the people. I know because clients have done it. I've done it when in my own searches. Okay, maybe in certain cases you're going to run into this problem that you're facing, but I don't think that's typical from my experience. But you should try to find out who you're going to meet with. Find out as much as you can. If you forget, call back the admin or the HR person who set up the interview and say, I'd love to know who I'm going to meet with, what their titles are, and if you can tell me about something about what they do. Not so I can bother them, but so I can prepare to show them how I can help them. That's how I would position it. It'll help me to prepare to show how I can help them if you can give me this information. Most of the time, they'll be happy to do it. In your case, I think it's more the exception than the rule.
Okay.
Okay? And if you position it maybe as, I'm just doing it so it'll be a more productive meeting, they might like that. Okay? Any other questions about this hypothesis and the questions you want to ask?
Well, you
Yes?
ask your questions at the end when they say, do you have any questions?
I'm going to get to that. What questions you need to ask when they say, do you have any other question? Okay? I'll answer that question in a little bit. Okay. So let's talk about how you research to form your hypothesis, right? Any good consultant will tell you that research is key. LinkedIn is one of the biggest low-hanging fruits out there in terms of research, okay? I've written a whole book about LinkedIn, so I'm obviously a big believer in it because I see it work. And one of the first things you should do is just check out people's LinkedIn profiles. It's easy to do. Yes?
What do you think about if you're in a company and you are linked into your coworkers and you're trying to look for a new job? You're linking to all these other people. Like, does your current manager know that you're looking for a job by looking at LinkedIn and seeing what you're doing? Like, I feel a little scared.
Yeah. Okay, so the question is, does your current manager know if you're using LinkedIn for a job search, right?
Can they kind of tell?
Here's what they know, okay? Here's what they know. If they see your profile, and your profile looks really different from the job you're in, that could be a problem, okay? So you want to be cognizant of that. But in this day and age, most people, or a lot of people, are linked in with their bosses, and that's pretty normal, and that's usually fine. You just got to be careful of having your profile be too different. But if you're active on LinkedIn, it doesn't mean a thing. My boss came to me and said, hey, I see you're active on LinkedIn. I'd say, hey, you should be active on LinkedIn too. I would. In this day and age, you've got to maintain your network. You say, I believe in maintaining an active network because I also bring things in. I bring things in to help me do my job more. And it's true. That's what LinkedIn is not just a resource for the job search. It's a resource for doing your job better. I'm actually going to talk about this in 2 months when I come back here in July. Is that you got to bring in things to your employer, new things. You got to be an investigator for your employer, and LinkedIn's a great investigative tool. And I would say, hey, you're my boss. I'm giving you some advice. Get on LinkedIn. Now, hold on. I'm going to answer your question a little bit more because it is important. As far as you sending messages to people, applying for jobs, stuff like that, they're not going to see that unless you share a group with them. If you are in a LinkedIn group and you are asking or answering questions, they'll see those messages. But even that's not a problem.
There's a little thing at the bottom where you can check, like, why are you on LinkedIn? And one of them is something about job inquiries. So maybe you shouldn't.
I would not worry, but I would just check everything, so, including the job inquiries. You just say, yeah, I'm always like to see what's going on. I really wouldn't worry about it so much.
Yeah, because you know what, it could change any day. You can get fired any day.
Absolutely.
So you gotta be
I wouldn't worry about that.
day.
I would not worry about that. I wouldn't worry about being connected to your boss. The only thing I'd worry about is if your profile looks really different than your job. Okay? That's an issue. You have a question?
Is there a way to let recruiters that are scanning LinkedIn know that you're interested in having them contact you without looking off your boss?
Your boss will never be tipped off. They won't know that you're getting messages from recruiters. No one's going to know except for you.
But I know, like, sometimes some people in their head or in their current position will say, currently seeking new opportunities or currently interested, to let, a quick way to let recruiters know that, yeah, I want you to get in touch with me.
Well, you can't do that if you're looking for a job. You can't say I'm looking for a job in your profile if you're looking for a job. You just can't do it. But recruiters aren't looking for that. They're not looking for that. They're looking for keywords. And they're looking to see keywords. You have to have the right keywords in your profile. Listen, we can't talk much more about this. We just don't have the time. But you need to have the keywords. I can't talk about LinkedIn right
Saying
now.
like clouds, like word clouds.
Yes.
Word
There's a whole
clouds. We know
section.
that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. There's a whole section in LinkedIn where you can put keywords. But that really is another subject. If I have time at the end, I'll address it in more detail. Okay? I really want to focus on the interview because there's so much to cover, right? Okay. So LinkedIn is a great place. Organizational websites. Okay? You want to look at their websites. Now, the investors section of public companies has great information about what's going on with the company, their strategy, their issues. So the investors section on public companies, it's usually like a little tiny link at the bottom of the home page. It says investors. Go to that. You'll often see PowerPoint presentations. You'll hear recordings of the quarterly meetings to analysts. Really, really great source of information about a company, about the strategy and the issues and the competition and all that stuff. So that's a good thing to check out for public companies. Executive bios, right? It's useful. Google, just the obvious stuff. Just Google the company. Google the people you're meeting with. Online trade journals. If you're in advertising, look at Adweek online, right? Blogs. Follow the blogs of people in the industry and in your profession. How do you know which blogs to follow? Just go to Google and type in best blogs in marketing, best blogs to follow in advertising, best blog. That's the easiest way to do it. Or go to a LinkedIn group and ask people in the group. Or go to an association you belong to and say if you belong to an association for project management, ask the project managers which blogs do you recommend. Okay. Other websites provide interesting company analysis. Twitter can be good. You know what you should do is check out my website, hellmanconsulting.com. I have a whole bunch of links for additional resources for research on companies that you're going to meet with and on people. Okay, so I have a bunch of other links, so you might want to check out my website for that. All right, so let's keep going. All right, and we already covered this, but just quickly, you want to look. Basically, in your research, you want to figure out what the perspectives are of people you meet, the financials, the industry developments, the latest products or services, rumors and gossip, best industry associations, acquisitions and divestitures, industry problems, all this stuff, right? Basically, you're just trying to find things that can help you figure out, A, what their issues are, so you can figure out how to help them, and B, do you want to be in this industry? Do you want to be with this company, right? So, okay. Questions you should ask. So now you've got your hypothesis, right? I'm going to give you a few basic ideas. Now, the questions you want to ask from this research are going to be very specific to the company, to what their plans are, okay? But there are some just general questions that should come to mind, basic questions that you should want to ask to understand what their issues are. Like, what are your issues? Right? Hey, what do you need help with? What do you need help with right away? How about 6 months down the road? Okay? Ask anything that will help you to understand what their issues are or how to follow up and make the quote-unquote sale. What are your greatest challenges in the next 6 months? What does a typical day look like? What are the characteristics of people who succeed in this role? How will my success be measured? Who will I be interacting with and how? And what do you need help with right away? These are just a few things. There are a lot of other things you can ask. But you get the answers to these questions. Remember, what I said to you at the beginning with the strategies, you want to talk about their issues and then show them how you can help them with their issues. Ask them questions about their issues and show them how you can help them with their problems using specific examples. So you might say, oh, like when they say, what are the characteristics of people who succeed in this role? And they say, well, we really need tenacity is really important, or presentation skills. Well, you can say, I've done dozens of presentations in the past 6 months. In fact, I just gave a presentation that was so well received, we actually got the client. Right. So now you're starting to use examples to show that you've done that. Right. I can help you with that. You just gave me the answer to your question, to the question I asked. I can now show you how I can help you. That's how you want to think about these questions. You get the information, then show them how you can help them using specific examples. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to keep asking, does that make sense? I don't want to be repetitive, but I really want to make sure you're with me. Okay, so just bear with me if I'm being too repetitive with that. Okay. Let's talk about something else. Let's talk about your 2-minute pitch, okay? Now, we actually spent a lot of time on this in another seminar I did a couple of months back here. I'm only going to talk about this relatively briefly, but I do want you to get it, get the understanding of what this is, okay? So your 2-minute pitch, it's a concise statement about how you can help a company, how you can help an organization, how you can help this person you're talking to, that you've really rehearsed so well that it's engaging, it's interesting, it grabs their attention. I'm sorry?
It's fluent.
It's fluent, right. So one client said it felt like an out-of-body experience. I was just so comfortable with it. Okay? That's how you want to make it. All right? That's how you want to say your pitch. So you got to rehearse it. You got to practice it. And it's really impressive to give a 2-minute pitch. First of all, you want to use it in answer to any open-ended question. Like, they ask you, tell me about yourself. They don't want to hear, well, I was born in a log cabin. Like, they don't care about that. They care, how can you help me, right? And why do you want to work here? Will you fit in? That's what they care about, right? So you don't want to say that. You want to give them your 2-minute pitch. Tell me about yourself. Well, I've had 15 years experience doing exactly what you're looking for. And I bring these other things that other people that you're looking at may not bring. And here are a couple of examples. And underlying my success in these areas has been my ability, my listening skills, or whatever it is, and I'm really excited to be talking to you. I mean, I just gave you a very skeletal outline of a 2-minute pitch just now. So let me say that let me be more specific. What you want to do is start off with what category or box do you fall into, which is essentially, I have 15 years experience in information technology, and in particular, help desk, managing a help desk, if that's what you're talking to them about, or something like that. I also bring expertise, not only in managing the help desk, but but in the specific systems that people are having trouble with, so I can have unusual insight into their problems. And I've been in their plate. I'm just making this up, right? And pretending there's somebody here with information technology. But anyway, the point is, so you start off with the box. Who are you? Who am I talking to? People want to understand who they're talking to. Then what makes you interesting or different from the competition. And I also bring this, this, and this. Then let me give you a couple of high-level examples. And we're going to talk about the examples you should be giving them. You're going to introduce them in your pitch, and then talk about them in much more detail throughout the interview. You just need 2 or 3 examples. Okay? And they should be high-level. They're almost like bullet points in words. And you want to say, like, I did this, which resulted in that. Okay? And you'll see what I mean more when we get into which stories, which examples you should use. Okay? But you always want to focus on, I did this, which resulted in that. That's what you want to do. The results are really important. Not just what you did, but what the results were. That's where the power is. Okay? And then you want to say, so it's 2 or 3 high-level examples, and you want to tie it all together. Underlying my success has been a real ability to establish a rapport with clients, and whatever it is. Okay, And then refocus it back on them. And I'm really glad to be talking with you because I think what you're looking for is something that I not only can do, but I'm actually really interested in, and I want to ask you. So refocus it back on this and make it that conversation. So that's now the way you do this is you write it down, you write it out, and then you keep reading it to yourself over and over and over again. Usually, on average, it takes people about an hour of continuous, almost really frustrating memorization, and then all of a sudden it just clicks. Okay? For me, after about 45 minutes, it starts to click. The first 45 minutes is terrible. I just can't remember. I can't remember it. I'm going over and over and over, and it's just like still sounds like I'm reading it. I have to go back to my notes. Then all of a sudden it starts to click, and after an hour of doing this, suddenly you don't have to even use that piece of paper anymore. It's just comfortable. You're throwing in additional words. You don't want it to sound like you're reading it when you're talking to a person, right? You got to make it sound very conversational. But just practice it for like an hour over and over again. Okay? So anyway, that's the big picture with the pitch. Let's talk about the stories. This is really, really important. We're going to do an exercise. We're going to take 5 minutes in a couple of minutes. I want to ask you to try and write down a story. Okay? And we'll talk about it. And this is the thing. You want to come up with 2 or 3 stories. You want to introduce the stories in your pitch. I did this, which resulted in that, right? And then later on in the interview, you want to talk about those stories in a lot more detail. Okay? You're going to use them to answer. You can use one story to answer almost any question. What are your greatest strengths? Give me an example of an obstacle you face. Give me an example of a difficult client. Give me an example of whatever it is. Lots of different questions they throw at you. You can use one story. Just using that story, telling it from different angles, you can answer any question. You don't have to have 15 different stories memorized. Just practice 2 or 3. Again, just telling them in a really engaging way. And I'm going to give you an idea about how you can tell a good story. Okay? So, you want to use it as part of the answer to every question you get. And the way you want to think about stories is you want to structure them. Situation or problem, action or result. So SAR, situation, action, result. Okay? And so you want to make it dramatic. You want to make it engaging, emotional. You don't want to just make it boring. Pretend like you're talking to a child. You have to keep a child's interest, right? If it's too high level, they're not going to care or be interested. If it's too detailed, the child's going to be bored and walk away. Same with the hiring manager, they're going to be bored. So you got to tell it at the right level, you got to make it interesting, you got to use imagery. Just like when you're telling a story to a child, you got to use images, you got to name things. Don't just say I have international experience. I have experience in Latin America, Asia, Europe. Use images, name things, right? Give numbers. Don't just say I improved efficiency. You could say I saved about 50% in terms of the time it took to get to market with this improvement. Right? Give numbers. That makes it come alive. Right? That's what you want to do. Okay? And you want to start with the problem. Make it like there's a huge opportunity we were missing. We were leaving $3 million at least each year on the table just because we weren't taking advantage of this opportunity. Or clients were leaving. We had a retention problem. We were losing millions of dollars because we were not able to stem this attrition problem. Interesting, right? You're kind of grabbing people's attention by stating it that way, right? What did you do about it? I took this action. The result was the clients stopped leaving. In fact, we were able to retain some high-profile clients that were really in danger of leaving. Okay? That's how you want to do it. So, I could give you an example. I'll just tell us. I was working on a story with a client who was telling me about, so they were in marketing, and they were in a marketing analytics group. So I'll just pretend I'm this client. So say they were asking me, what's your greatest strength? Okay? I would say, well, my greatest strength is my ability to analyze a problem and then get buy-in on the solution from stakeholders. Okay? So let me give you an example. I was working with I was working in a marketing group, and I saw that our clients, our internal clients, were very dissatisfied. The projects they were asking us to work on were delayed, were behind schedule. Sometimes nobody knew what was going on. There were all kinds of communications problems, and they were getting really frustrated with our department, and it was delaying our ability to put these crucial marketing campaigns out in the field, so we were actually potentially losing a window of opportunity in thousands and maybe millions of dollars of business. So we had to I came up with this idea for a workflow management solution. I actually came up with the idea by researching it within the company and outside the company. I actually roped in all the stakeholders, got their buy-in. I'm not going to tell you the whole story, okay, but you get the idea, right? Got their buy-in, then oversaw its implementation, and I might say a few other things, and the result was all those issues about complaints about what's happening, this thing is delayed, we're missing our window, disappeared. And we potentially, the estimate savings that was estimated was over $1 million a year because of this workflow management solution. And it's interesting, I think, no? Right? And this is like, you want to try to tell it in a way that, again, grabs their attention, okay? So why don't we take 5 minutes, why don't you write down 1 or 2 or as many success stories as you want or can in this 5 minutes, and then I want to ask you, or a couple of you, to share your stories, and let's practice telling them. You'll get some instant feedback from me. You'll get some instant career coaching, and it'll benefit everybody. Okay? Something where there's a problem, the action you took, and then a result. Okay? So ready, go. Okay, does anybody want to share one of their stories and get some feedback? Okay.
Well, excuse me, I think what helped with the job was when I first came on the interview.
I'm sorry, could you stand up just because I'm having trouble hearing you, and I want to make sure everybody else can hear you. Thank you for offering to share your experience.
The shipping department that I was working at, they were having problems getting different clients, getting their stuff to them early in the morning, always late.
Okay.
And the first thing that they told me was that their dubbing department was 24 hours. Continuing with W. So all right, well, the shipping department, and when's the last person out in the shipping department? The last person out in the shipping department was 11 o'clock. Well, the dub center was still
The what center?
The
Dub
dub
Center.
Dub center. Still making dubs all night.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time the next person, well, what time is the first person to leave? The first person in the morning isn't in until 9. So from 11 to 9, there's nobody there while your dub center is still making dubs. A client wants their package at 8, but your first person in isn't in until 9. Without telling them that their IQ was just that much above a small appliance bulb. How are you having your first person in the morning at 9? The client wants their package in at 8. The dub center's not finished the dub until somewhere in between there, and the last person to leave is at 11 o'clock. If the dub center's 24 hours, the shipping department is 24 hours too.
Okay.
And that is actually how.
So the result?
The result was that I ended up making, well, I made the shipping department 24 hours. I got hired, and that was the first thing I did.
Mm-hmm. And what was the result?
Well, the result was the complaint stopped about not getting their packages on time.
Great, that's what you want to go
They got
for.
more
So,
work.
so that's a good story. I mean, I know you were kind of talking more to me than to an interview because you kind of insulted them with your intelligence. I don't think you would say that in an interview.
I want to believe.
Yeah. I don't think you want to do that in an interview, but I think the story is a good one because there was a problem. And I mean, I don't know what the Dub Center is, but again, this is your interviewer would know. It's fine. There's a problem. You explained what your solution was and that you were able to implement it, and the solution was, and the result was that all the complaints stopped. So that's actually a pretty good story. So that was a good example. Thanks. Does anybody else want to share? You had one, right?
Sure. So the situation is that I noticed there was a high number of questions regarding a specific software application, and there were a lot of calls going into a help desk, and also there was low performance from the end users. So I set up a meeting with the subject matter experts and the help desk to analyze the data, see what was coming in, what the questions were, and identify the recurring issue that there was a lack of formalized training and policy. So I developed a class, exercises, lectures, etc., and the results were that the help desk reported there were fewer phone calls, fewer questions, and the subject matter experts resulted in a higher, a more efficient use of the system.
Okay, that's another good story. I think you can even make it better. So did everybody hear that? Yeah, basically, so there was a problem that they weren't, the problem was that they weren't using the software properly, and there were problems in the way they were using the software, right? But you didn't know what the problems were. So you were getting, so I would be stronger about the problem. I would say, what was the cost of that problem? You don't have to put dollars if you don't know them, but somehow quantify that problem. It makes it more interesting and more dramatic. Why is that a really big problem if they weren't using the software? I want to engage people in it. Can you tell me? Do you know?
Well, there were a lack of sales that were being put into the system.
A lack of sales that were being input into the system. What does that mean then? That they
Bottom line dollars were being lost.
bottom line dollars you mean were being lost in terms of being recorded?
Being recorded and being processed through.
So they were actually happening. The sales were actually happening, but they just weren't being recorded.
Right.
So maybe then forecasts were off, and so you got to go to the bottom line. Try to get to the bottom line somewhere. That makes it much more powerful. So you can say it was affecting all our forecasts, and actually affecting our inventory, or whatever you want to say, and our ability to plan. So we're actually losing money because of this problem. If you could do that, it makes it much more interesting than just saying there was a problem. Okay. Then the action you took was I talked to people, right, you identified it was a training issue, you implemented training, that was all great. The result, I think you need to do the same thing. You have to say there were less problems. No, I would say the result was, I mean, that's fine, you can say that. Well, the training reduced by 80% the number of whatever that was reported or something. And the result was the forecasts were more accurate. And and our budget projections suddenly became far more accurate, and we may have saved tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars because of it, or something like that. If you can say that, that would be great. So I think both stories are excellent. I think just in the telling of them, you want to make the problem and the result, that's where the emotion is, right? Try to engage them in those ends of it, okay? Let's keep going, but I just wanted you to kind of go over a couple of examples so you can all hear how to do this. Now, we're going to use these two stories, and if somebody else maybe later wants to share another one, we can use another one to answer lots of different interview questions in a few minutes, okay? But you want to have these in your back pocket, these stories, and you want to use these stories to answer questions. You want them to know about these stories. Your goal is to get these stories out in the interview. You want to share them with them. That's because they're impressive, because you've practiced telling them, because you know it's impressive, and you have passion behind it, and you've rehearsed it, so it'll be interesting for them. Okay? Yeah.
So I have a question. How long exactly does an interview last? 30 minutes, 45 minutes?
How long does it? Depends. It could last 20 minutes. It could last 2 hours. Yeah, it really depends. There's no set rule. It really depends. Okay? And I wouldn't read into it if it's short. Or long usually means that they're interested. But doesn't mean they're not interested just because it's short. Okay? All right. So, a couple of things. Now we're talking about at the interview. So we're going to revisit these stories in a little while. Okay? At the interview. Okay, so we've done with the preparation. Okay, we've covered the pitch, we've covered the hypothesis, we've covered the questions, we've covered the stories, what you're afraid to bring up, we've covered all that stuff. Okay? Now what do you do when you get there? Okay? Well, get there early. Now, I'm only saying that because there's always some percentage of people that have trouble with getting to places on time, and that's just, it's just so easy to start off on a good foot by getting there on time. It's so easy to start off on a bad foot by being late. Especially some people really take that as a sign of disrespect. So make the effort. If it's a 10 o'clock interview, get there at 9:30. That doesn't mean, it does not mean you have yourself announced at 9:30 if it's a 10 o'clock interview. You need to now make sure 5 minutes before. If you get there early, you say, listen, I know I'm early. Please don't announce me. I will just sit here quietly and wait. And because it's too early, I don't want to disturb them yet. They're not expecting me for a while. Okay? That's what you do, but you should get there early. Okay? Did you have a question?
Not a question, just a statement. They also find that something you can show up.
If you show up early.
Very early, yes.
Yeah, no, it's not appropriate. It's not appropriate. Like, they're busy. What are you doing here? We said 10, right? So if you get there early, just wait in the administration area, in the office, in the waiting room, or wait across the street in a coffee shop. It's okay to wait in the waiting room and just say, please don't buzz them. I'm happy to just sit here and wait. It's totally fine. There's no place like that. Then wait across the street or in your car. All right? But get there early, and you never know. Plus, what can go wrong, right? So you don't want to. Just don't be late. Okay? And you want to be relaxed and all that stuff, right? I can tell you I had a story once where I was, I take my own advice usually, but in this one case there were so many train problems, and I was going to an interview. This is a bunch of years ago, and it was, first of all, the train was delayed, and it was one of these super hot days, so I was a mess. I was sweating and stuff, and I'm going to go into an interview like this. Luckily I got there so early. I actually said, listen, I'm here early, don't announce me. I just want to use the men's room and freshen up, and then I'll come back in a few minutes. So I went to the men's room and I totally freshened up. Actually, I'll tell you, I'm a teacher. I teach at NYU. That was the interview for the NYU job, right? I teach at NYU. So I just remember, because I got there early, I was able to get my act together. Imagine, I made a whole career out of working at NYU. Imagine if I hadn't taken my own advice that I'm giving you, I wouldn't be there. So, okay. Take notes. Now, a lot of people think, take notes. That doesn't feel comfortable to me. I'm in an interview. I have to just please them. It's not about that, okay? This is a business meeting. You're trying to help them, and they're going to try and help you by giving you a job, right? So you want to take notes because you need to remember what they said so you can follow up effectively. That's where you turn a no into a yes. You turn a no into a yes, by following up effectively. So, especially if you're meeting with more than one person, you really want to write down, if you're meeting with 3 people, 4 people, have a page for each person in your notebook. And just write the words down here or there, anywhere in the margins or anywhere on that page. That means you don't want to stare at your notebook. You don't want to be like this, right? You want to be maintaining eye contact. In this culture, you got to maintain eye contact. Otherwise, it's disrespectful. They think you don't care. So you got to maintain eye contact. But what you can do is, if you remember, you're like, I got to follow up on that, right? You might write down a word or 2 here or there. Just write down a word, and while you're still looking at them, okay? You don't have to ask them for permission. Just do it. It's no problem. This is what a consultant would do. Any consultant is going to come in with a notebook and write down stuff, and then give the follow-up proposal or whatever afterwards. You need to do the same thing. Show energy and enthusiasm, only because that conveys interest. But I do want to say something about that. And this isn't even on here, but if you can try and mirror the person you're meeting with, that's a good thing. And what I mean by that is, like, if you're very outgoing and the person you're meeting with is, you can see they're very reserved, try to curb your enthusiasm a little bit, to borrow an expression from the show, okay? Curb your enthusiasm a little bit, because people like to hire people like them. It's a human tendency. We all can't help but do that, right? Vice versa, if you're reserved and this person's super exuberant and outgoing, do your best to kind of ramp it up a little bit, okay? Just keep it in mind, all right? Look them in the eye, we talked about that. Firm handshake, this stuff you know. I know you all know this. Dress professionally, brush your teeth and bring a breath mint. Just don't forget about these things, Even if you have no problem with your breath, just take a breath mint beforehand, okay? Shower beforehand. I mean, I'm just covering all the bases here. I know you all shower beforehand, okay? And look the part, okay? Look the part, look appropriate for the position, okay? Don't have yourself announced until 5 minutes before. We talked about that. Don't fidget. Try to control those habits that are distracting. You're going to distract them from paying attention to you. Okay? Don't use strong cologne or perfume. Some people might really like it. Some people might really hate it. You don't want to be divisive in that way. Okay? Don't be negative. This is really important. I left it for last, but this is an underlying theme of the whole interview. Negativity is a no-no. You want to frame everything in the most positive way possible. So if they say, do you have experience in X? And you don't have experience in X, you can say, I don't have experience in X. Or you could say, well, I have experience in Y, which is just like X. Which is the better answer? The second. Right. So you're framing, you should go everything, again, think of the interview really as a game. I don't mean to trivialize it, but it's a game in the best sense of the word, where you want to give them what they want. You want to show them how you can help them. So you're always thinking, how can I use this situation to show them how I can help them? Not, I must answer this question literally and say no. You're thinking, if I could show them how, the best way for me to show them how I can help them is to say, well, I have experience in Y, which is just like X. That's better than just saying no, right? So you got to always keep that in mind. You want to be as positive as possible. Frame everything in a positive way. Negativity isn't going to help you. Other things, okay. In this we talked about this a little bit already. Difficult interview questions. You really want to think that this is a game. It's not about what is the correct answer. It's about how do I play it to show them how I can help them using specific examples from my experience, using those specific stories you started working on. Okay? That's what you want to do. And you want to be positive, your attitude, right? They really don't, when I say they don't care, what I mean is, they don't care about your long, drawn-out answer about why you were let go or why you're looking, right? Don't talk so much. Focus on the issues that are important to them, okay? They want to hire you. They want to get this process over with, okay? So just keep the eye on the ball, which is the game, and the way you win the game is this way. You've got to reprogram your brain, okay? It's not, I must put, like if they say, what's your greatest weakness, you don't want to literally say, I tend to fall asleep after lunch at my desk, right? That's not good, right? Okay, I'm going to talk to you about how to answer your greatest weakness, okay? You want to first think, the first thing you want to say is, can I use this question to show how I can help them using a story, right? Like the stories you just heard. Can I use this question to show them how I can help them using a story. That is the very first thing you should think of. Not, I must be literal and tell them I have no experience in this area, but maybe I can tell them I have experience in another area that they'd be interested in, just like the example we were just talking about. That's the first, I can't emphasize this enough. It is a whole mindset. Sometimes, for some reason, a lot of people have trouble remembering this. You've got to practice thinking, I'm going to think this way first. It's like you have to pause for a split second. Okay? How can I help them using a specific story? That's the first thing you want to think about. If nothing comes to you, okay, then can I decide, do I have, then either you're wasting time or you're hurting yourself. If you can't do the first thing, you're either wasting time or hurting yourself. So that means you A, want to sidestep the question. Maybe you don't have to answer it directly. Or B, answer it briefly and then get back to your agenda. Which is what we did before. We were talking about what you're most afraid they're going to bring up. A couple people mentioned gaps in their resume. You answer it briefly, then get back to your agenda, which is talking about them, about how you can help them and why you want to work there. We already demonstrated that earlier. Do you agree that we demonstrated that, right? When we talk about why do you have these big gaps, right? So you don't want to talk so much about that. So just answer it briefly and then get back to your agenda, showing how you can help them. That's the strategy behind answering interview questions. Is this number one? If you can't do number one, you go to number two, and then if you can't do number two, go to number three. Okay? So I'm not going to just say that. We're going to actually go through some interview questions. Okay? Before we get into the specific questions, I want to talk about situations where, people are talking about stuff that has nothing to do, that doesn't give you an opportunity to show how you can help them. Like, they may be talking about, hey, we both went to Montclair, those are great times, and you're going on and on and on about some fraternity or sorority, and it just, after 5 minutes of that, if you're not talking about the job, you're going to have to, at some point, interrupt, and wait for that pause, and then say, hey, what you said a couple minutes ago, I want to ask you about this or that. Okay? You have to bring it back on track about showing how you can help them using examples from your experience, because they want to know, how can you help me? They don't want to know, that might be good for where you fit in, right? That, hey, we both went to the same sorority or fraternity or whatever. But not for how can you help me, and not for why do you want to work here. So you need to answer those questions, okay? A common situation is, and I've experienced this, maybe you all have, is that when you go into an interview and all they do, they're just talking and talking and talking about the job. They're not asking you anything. Because they're not good interviewers. They're nervous themselves. So they're just talking to them. They're going on. And, I remember early on in my career, I remember saying, boy, that was easy. I didn't have to say a word and just talk about the job the whole time. And of course I didn't get the offer, right? Because somebody else interrupted. If somebody else said, hey, here, what you said is interesting because I just did that exact same thing, right? So you have to do that too, okay? Has anybody had that experience where they just go on and on and on, talk about the job and not ask you anything? Right. So you can't do that. You gotta, hey, interrupt. If they've done this for like 10 minutes, say, hey, what you said a couple of minutes ago really reminded me of something I did, or I wanted to ask you about something that you said a couple of minutes ago. You have to do
So
that.
they are not very professional then. Well, I understand that the game is on our side, so we have to capture, right, the attention in order to get hired. But if the other end, talks nothing about the job, is it what were you saying or not?
Well, what I'm saying is not that they're not professional. They just may not know how to interview, or maybe they're not. They do their job really, really well, but they're not. They're just uncomfortable in those situations. They may be very professional in other areas, but it's not even professional. It's really about not knowing how to interview. They may look at you. They may look at you. I mean, that hasn't.
But they might be very shy.
Yeah, they may be. Exactly, they may be shy. Who knows? But the point is, you got to take the initiative to make it this conversation, which is really an underlying theme of every seminar I give on all aspects of the job search. Is you have to take control. You have to take the initiative. Don't wait for them. In every seminar, you'll hear me say this at some point. And the interview is no different. You got to make it that conversation. If it's not that conversation about how you can help them, about using specific examples, you got to find a way, as much as possible, to make it about that. Okay? And I've already started to explain to you how you can do that, right? By maybe ending with a question. You have a difficult question from them, you answer it briefly, then end with a question, turn it back to them. Right? Keep changing the subject, refocusing back to them. Aim for that conversation. Okay, let's talk about some difficult interview questions. So, keeping in mind that first thing, can somebody tell me what's the first thing you need to think about when someone asks you a difficult question? Just from the previous slide, can someone tell me?
Sure.
If you want, you can cheat, but I'd rather you not cheat by looking at the handouts. What's the first thing that should go through your head when somebody asks you an interview question?
Oh, crap.
That wasn't what I was looking for, but yeah.
How you can tie it into your story?
Yes, basically, but I would say it a little bit differently.
How can I answer this in a way that they can see that I can help them?
Yeah, I want to combine your answer with your answer. So how can you answer this in a way that they can see how you can help them using specific examples, using stories? That's so you got to memorize that. You've got to think that way when you go into an interview. Okay? So how would you find a needle in a haystack? Now, a client in a presentation I gave said, Rob, I got this interview question. I didn't know what to do. How do you answer this question? So how would you find a needle in a haystack? Does anybody want to answer it? Yeah.
How about trying to rent a metal detector, locate the general area, so you have to look at the whole
All right, we have metal detector so the needle will be pulled out of the haystack. Okay.
I would say in this case you could, depending on how you could burn the haystack and get rid of everything that's unnecessary to find the one thing that you do need. So get rid of all the stuff that's blocking what you're actually trying to find.
Okay, so you burn down the haystack, and then you'll find the needle will be left. Right. Okay. Anybody else want to take a shot at it? Yeah.
I just would probably answer in a way like they did. I would just point out, I would try to find a way that I'd be working smarter, faster, not harder and longer. And then give an example of an achievement, a process that I automated or saved the company time and money.
Okay. All right. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. So here's what I would do. Okay. They're all good, and they're not going to hurt you to say those things. The best answer, though, again, I'm thinking about how can I use this as an opportunity to show them how I can help them using a specific example from my experience. That's the first thing that goes through my head. So if I could, what I would try and do is say, you know, your question really reminds me of a situation we faced recently where there was something wrong, and it was just like trying to find a needle in a haystack. And here's what we did. I mean, if you can do that, that's the best thing to do. That's the best. You see that? Because now you're telling them, you're using it as an opportunity. You're answering their question and using it as an opportunity to show them how you can help them using a specific example that you practice. So that's the way I would do that. Now I'm going to give you a really easy one. You should hope you get this question, okay? What's your greatest strength? Who wants to answer that? Who wants to tell me what their greatest strength is? And answer the question. You ready? Okay?
I would say my two greatest strengths are my openness to feedback and that I'm a tough but fair person when it comes to working with students. An example of this I can give is I teach new student seminar in which students see this class on our campus often as a joke. So the very first day of class I came in and asked them, how do you see this class? And okay, I hear many of you see it as a joke. We are here for 50 minutes every week. What do you want to get out of this class? How can we make this 50 minutes very useful for you? And then halfway through the semester, as I was grading them, I also had them give me feedback. Most of the students gave me A's and B's. One gave me a C because I didn't bring in the cookies like I promised after they all passed the test. But they hadn't all passed yet, so that was in my defense. And I found that the students were really engaged with that. And at the end of the semester, many of them are still connected to me and they still come back to me for help. And when I ask them, I heard one student talk about how you know, Miss Davis is really easy professor, and I was like, no, she's not. She's really hard. She's really nice, and she's really good at this.
Great. That's a great example. Did everybody hear that? Yeah. That's a really good example. So you answered the question, then you used a really interesting story. And it was a clear success story. You had a problem, the action you took, and the result. So that was very good. You get an A. Okay. So, all right, so let's do, so that's how you, okay, so let's talk about some other questions, okay? Let's talk about, there's a whole bunch of questions that are sort of related. What's your greatest weakness? Give me an example of something on your development plan. Give me an example of a criticism your boss gave you. Give me an example of an outcome that wasn't what you wanted. All those are related because they're designed to get at something that wasn't great, right? In your experience or in who you are. And actually, the reason people ask that, they ask you for two reasons. One is you can screen people out because you might say something that's like, whoa, forget it. We can't, you want to be in sales, but you're afraid to call people. You said, I get too nervous and I sometimes can't, that's not going to work. Okay. So the other reason, though, is they, especially at more senior levels, they want to see that you're thoughtful, that you're introspective, that you can learn from things and you can develop. That you can find that more and more, that they're really looking for that at more senior levels. They're looking for a thoughtful answer, a reflective answer. Okay? So you could say it's less, so the best answer is not about, well, I'm really weak in this system, that's not the best answer because it doesn't address the thoughtful thing, right? The best answer to these questions is one, again, where you can answer it and then show them how you can help them using a specific story. And how do you do that? Pick something that maybe you learned 10 years ago, ideally. Say, I learned 10 years ago that, I'm going to make something up. This is my own thing. I'm too enthusiastic. I'm very enthusiastic. And sometimes, I learned this years ago, I got this feedback that in my enthusiasm, I forget to ensure that everybody is on board with my idea. And at one time, I didn't get a proposal approved because of that. But I've learned from that. It's been in my mind ever since. And it's been really a key reason I've been so successful ever since over the past 10 years. Let me give you an example. So when I was trying to do this workflow management project, this is a whole new system. Now I'm telling my story. Okay? You want to end on the story. You want to end on the story of your success story. Here was the problem, the action I took, and the result. Okay? That's the best way to do it. Okay? Does that help? Okay. So do you feel comfortable with that? Because every so often people get those questions. You guys are good with that? Okay, great. Now, there are some other questions you might get. But let me ask you this. Do you prefer a hands-on or a hands-off boss? Who wants to answer it? Go ahead.
I prefer a combination of both.
Great.
I like to be able to have someone that I can go to, bounce ideas off of, and get direction from, and then let them allow me to do the job as I need to.
Actually, I would take it back because I understand what you meant. I would say, why do you have to choose? Because if you say, I want both, well, what if the person's a hands-on? Or what if the person's a hands-off? They're not both, right? Why do you have to answer the question exactly the way they ask it? And you actually did it, so that's to your credit. But I would think about it like, you don't always have to answer the question exactly the way they ask it. You can say, I have no preference. I can work with either type. And you can even say, let me give you an example. You can talk about one of your projects, one of your success stories, and give an example. Okay? Tell me about a boss, a difficult boss. Tell me about a difficult boss. Who wants to answer that?
I honestly, I could ask them what do you mean by difficult, define difficult?
I would say a boss that you found difficult, that you found, you can define it. What's from your experience, tell me about an experience with a difficult boss.
Just that you can have a lot of difficult bosses because you're not afraid of hard work. And as long as they're asking something reasonable, you're able to copy them.
I'd say that's almost an A. I want to tell you why. I think it was really good what you said. So you said basically, just so people make sure people can hear that, you never had any difficult bosses. You're not afraid of hard work. I love that you said you didn't have any difficult bosses. You don't have to say I had a difficult boss. Why do you have to buy into that? You can say, I actually feel I never had a difficult boss. I've had challenging bosses. I like a challenge, right? I would frame it positively. So as long as they're asking something reasonable, it doesn't sound as positive. You've got to remember thinking positive want to keep everything as positive. I mean, if they're asking something that's unreasonable, so you had, I would want to know what was unreasonable. What's, I would want to ask you about that if I was interviewing you. So just try to frame it in the most positive way possible.
So this is all like kind of a game on like how to answer it the right way. Because
Yep.
I've had 3 bosses that got fired above me in 3 years. So I can tell you tons of bad boss stories.
Well, it's not going to help you. It's not going to help you because they're going to, in some part of their brain, you're going to be thinking, maybe she'll think I'm not good. Yeah, yeah. It will not help. It's a fun thing to talk about with other people that aren't interviewing you.
Yeah.
But not, yeah.
But I mean, I've just heard other viewpoints on this. Aren't they also, to some extent, looking for honesty here? Like, aren't they looking for, if you have a problem, what do you do about it? How did you solve, like, are they really going to believe me when I tell them I get along with everybody and I've never had a bad boss?
Here's what you want to do. Here's what you want to do. So it's a great question. Did everybody hear that question? Okay. Are they looking for honesty? What they're looking for, the thing they are looking for is, how can you help me? Why do you want to work here? Are you going to leave in 6 months and will you quit? So I would, in every question I get, I would be looking to answer that question. Okay? So if it were me, I would say I never had a difficult boss. I've had challenging bosses. I've had demanding bosses. I love it. Bring it on. I'm into the work I do, and I'm a hard worker. And in fact, let me give you an example. I had a very challenging boss in this last project. Very high expectations. I would talk about the project. I would tell my story. So I bring my story in. They will love it. They will love it. It is a game. It's a game. It's not literal honesty. It's business savvy. You know what it means to be business savvy? That's what we're talking about here. They want you to sell them. They don't want you to be literally honest. You've got a lot of other departments to deal with. You have to deal with people all the time at work. If you can't play the game with them, you're not going to be able to play it with other people that you're going to have to work with in the company. So they want you to be savvy that way. It's going to help you. Okay? Always bring it back to how you can help them with their problems. That's what you want to do. That's being business savvy. Okay? Like a politician. Sorry. But that's, yeah. All right? Let's see if there are any other ones. What do we have here? Oh, you know what? I think we kind of covered it. Okay. Let's keep going then. So that's difficult interview questions. Okay? All right. What do you do if they ask about salary? Now, if you could cheat and look at the slides, or you could just not look at them and just try to answer it. You're probably all looking at the slides. Go ahead.
You can defer the question.
What do you
say
offer?
You need more information about the position, the responsibilities, etc., before you can make a reasonable judgment.
I think you're on the right track. Were you going to say something?
What do you offer? Ask them what they offer.
You're also on the right track. All right, let me answer it. You want to avoid discussions about salary until after you receive the offer. You know why? There are a couple of reasons. First off, it destroys your negotiating leverage. You could be underselling yourself. That's it, right? Secondly, they have all the leverage when they're interviewing you. They have other candidates, right? They're looking to screen you out of. And salary is the easiest way for them to screen you out. I've had so many great interviews with clients have been derailed because they forgot this rule. And I'll tell you how to avoid it. That's the next thing we're going to talk about not discussing salary until after you receive the offer. Now, once you receive the offer, you have all the leverage. All these things you thought that were seemingly not negotiable, all of a sudden they become negotiable because they really want you. They've decided on you. They forgot about everybody else. They're focused on you. So you really want to push off the salary question as much as you can until after you receive the offer. I'm going to show you how.
Oh, well,
That's your question.
No, not exactly.
Okay.
Sort of. I was actually on a website that I had applied. They sent it to the company website, and part of the website in the application, you had to send in your resume, but you also had to fill out an application. On the application, it asked about salary.
Right.
How do you get around that box?
I'm going to briefly address that, just in the matter because of the time. I can't get into too much detail, but when they ask you for salary on the application, if they say in that you must present salary requirements or you will not be considered, then you must present salary requirements or you will not be considered. If you're dealing with a headhunter, you must give them salary. You have to. It's just the way the rules are, okay? Or they won't consider you. In any other situation, I would avoid it. A lot of times with the applications, it's a bureaucratic formality. These applications are often one size fits all. You know, you can just leave it blank or write open or say to be discussed and leave it at that. They'll probably have no problem. Or if it's an application where you must put a number in, sometimes an online application you got to put some kind of a number in. Put $10 in or $1 or $100 in. So just they know that it's not real, right? You know, just get past the application. You're playing the odds. What are the odds of them rejecting you because you put $10 in versus the odds of them rejecting you because you put the salary in? The odds of them rejecting you because you put the salary in are much higher. Much higher than if you put $10. Most of the time they won't care. They just want to have the key information on file. I really don't want to get too much more into it just because of time, okay? But that's the idea, all right? Avoid salary, okay? If you have to give a number, try to give a range. If there's even if they ask you must put requirements in, give a range. In fact, that goes to the next slide. So this is what you want to do. If it comes up, if they say, so what are you looking to make? Or what did you make in your last position? The first thing you want to say, salary's not going to be an issue. I know we're both fair and we'll be able to work something out. That's the first thing you want to say. That's going to work 6 out of 10 times. It's going to work 60% of the time. Salary's not going to be an issue. I know we're both fair. We're going to be able to work something out. And I'm sure, because I have clients every day, that some of you are saying, well, I can't say that. It sounds like I have a lot of nerves in it. Remember, this is a game. You're already starting a negotiation when they ask you this, right? Be smart. Be business savvy. Say that, okay? Now, 6 out of 10 times this will work. 4 out of 10 times it won't. What do if it doesn't work? If they say, well, we really do need a number, so we should go on. We got to get some idea. Number 2, which is the truth. You can say, there's so many aspects to compensation. Usually it's not just base. There's bonus, there's profit share, there's 401k matching, there's amount of raises, there's frequency of raises, there's benefits, and on and on. So I think it might be premature to talk about salary without understanding the whole picture. And I'm still learning about the job, and you're learning about what I can do for you. So if you don't mind, I'd like to postpone this part of the conversation. That's going to work another 20% of the time. Okay? So now you're up to 80%. So 20% of the time, they're still going to want the number. They can say, well, we really do need a number. Then you say, somebody just said, what were you thinking? Who said that? Somebody said that. Anyway.
What do you offer?
Yeah, what were you thinking?
What would you offer?
Yeah, what do you think? Turn it back to them. They'll say, oh, we're thinking whatever. And you say, oh, be able to work something out. Okay? And lastly, if you have to give a number, give a range. Give a range meaning the lowest you could absolutely possibly accept to the highest you think it could possibly be. So you don't get screwed out. Okay? So that's what you want to do with salary. Any questions about that? Because that's going to come up at some point in the interview process almost always. People feel comfortable with that? All right. So, how to handle references. You want to protect your references from being bombarded with calls. Again, on those forms, right? The applications, they always say, please provide references. Always say, to be provided upon strong, you can say top-notch references will be provided upon strong mutual interest. You want to give your references to them when you think you're close to an offer. And if they ask for your references, you can say, are you close to making me an offer? If they say yes, you can say, all right, I'll give them to you. But when you give them, you have to say, I have to call them first. I told them I'd call them first and let them know you're going to call. So I can, because I told them I'd protect them from being, bombarded, right? So then you call your references and you say, listen, they're going to call you. Can you please emphasize my communication skills? Or my ability, my presentation skills, or my ability, my top-notch programming ability, or whatever it is. Okay? So you call your references, and then you give them your reference. You give them your best references first. You say, I'll send you my references. I have to call them. Okay? So you call your best reference. You tell them, and then you give them your best reference first. Then you give them your next best reference, second and third. Okay? They all should be good, obviously. But anyway, that's how you handle references. Okay? Any questions on that? All right. Now, key questions. When they say, do you have any other questions for me? Okay? The key questions you must ask. You must ask, please. I'm going to ask you to ask these questions. Okay? Very important. Are you interviewing other candidates? If they are, depending where they are in the interview process, how do I measure up against the other people you're seeing? That's part one. Part two is, do you have any issues with my candidacy? Another way to say that is there any reason you wouldn't want to hire someone like me? Okay. The point of these two questions is to surface their objections. You want to surface their objections before you walk out of that interview. Has anybody ever had the experience where you said, hey, that was a great interview, boy, they really loved me, I'm sure I'm going to get an offer, and then you never heard from them again, or they turned you down? Who's that? Anybody had that experience? Yeah, a few people, right? I've had it, right, way back when. Now, you don't want to have that experience. This is going to help you to not have that experience. And this is going to help you to influence the outcome. This is going to help you to turn a no into a yes. You cannot turn a no into a yes if you don't know what their objections are. So, 75% of the time, you will get a straight answer to these questions. 25% of the time, you won't, and that's either because you're so far off, they don't know where to begin, and they don't want to have an uncomfortable conversation, so there's no way you're going to get the job anyway. You're just really far. Maybe you rubbed them the wrong way. Who knows? Okay? Or they just really have an interpersonal issue. They're uncomfortable, and then you probably don't want to work with them. It's because they can't answer a straightforward question like that, and they like you. That's an issue with them. Okay? 75% of the time, you will get a straight answer, and I can tell you, clients have turned a no into a yes based on the answers to these questions. Now, these are two different questions. They might say, you know what? We have no issues with your candidacy. You're the best candidate. You're a great candidate. You're a great candidate. We have no issues with your candidacy. But we have somebody else that we've interviewed who's an even better candidate than you. He's got more experience, or she's got more experience in this than you do. Right? Or they might say, no, you're the best candidate we've seen. You're the best out of all the candidates we've seen so far. But we still have an issue with your candidacy. Nobody we've seen has the experience we're looking for. So you need to ask both questions. And so let me just give you an example. I'm going to give you a negative and a positive example. So I remember interviewing somebody when I was at Chase, and I remember I was interviewing her with my boss, and she was great. She was a great fit for the department. Really smart, really personable, and all that. And we really liked her. And we both knew that we were not going to make her an offer. There was no way. We didn't have to say it. Because as great as she was and as smart and everything, she was missing key experience. I was in the marketing area, marketing analytics experience that we were looking for. So she left that interview thinking everything was wonderful, and we never made it. We offered the job to somebody else. So if she had asked these questions, she would have had an opportunity to address that. What she did do, though, and this is what you should do, is she called me. She called me. Now, if she had emailed me, I never would have responded because we rejected her. I would have felt uncomfortable responding. I'm just telling you, right? I wouldn't. If she said, "What happened?" And emailed me, I would have felt uncomfortable responding about it. But she called me. She called me before I got busy, before 9, before I was in meetings all day. And she said, "What happened?" And then I went, "Great." I said, "Yeah, we really liked you. It did go great, but you don't have this experience, and that's why we had to turn you down." She goes, "I didn't realize that. I didn't understand that was an important part of the job." And she said, "Is there somebody else in the company that might be able to use my marketing background?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm going to pass your resume on to this other person. You should respect me and tell them I referred you." So she ended up getting an interview in this other department because she called me. That's what I was saying before. Even if it's not a match, it's still a good thing if you got along, if you had a rapport, because they might refer you to somebody else. Okay? But if she had asked this question, we would absolutely have told her, because we wanted to hire her. We liked her. We wanted to hire her. We would have loved to say, "Okay, this is the thing. Address it. Sell us." Right? The sale begins after the customer tells you what their objections are. That's a common saying in the sales world. All right? How do people feel about this? Are you going to do it in the interview? Anybody feel like they can't do it? Yes? You feel you can't?
No, I just wanted to, I'm sorry. I just wanted to ask, to me it seems like if the interview is over, and then you're saying, do you have any issues with my candidacy? And so then, let's say they say, well, we're just concerned about the gap in your resume, we're concerned about whatever they're concerned about. And, they're just telling you honestly, that's
why we have those. So then I would think that that would be the last thing they were going to want to hear you saying, but, you know, but this, but that, like, you might come across looking a little desperate. Well, I could explain that. Oh, I have this. You know what I mean? Like,
I wouldn't come across desperate. I'd say I can explain it. Well, I would say, not that I can explain it. I would say, maybe I didn't, I can explain it. Yeah, let me explain the gap. And here's, absolutely. And then you're going to see.
It's like your last chance.
Yeah. You've got to, if you don't address it, forget it. You don't come across desperate.
Yeah.
Just explain it.
I was trying to go into their head and
Yeah.
thinking like, well, the next candidate's coming, and now this person is not letting me wrap this up.
Well, you can quickly
Yeah.
address it and then address it more in the follow-up, which is I'm going to show
Okay.
you how to do that.
Got it.
This is the rest of this talk is going to be about the follow-up, because now you've got their objections. You've also understood thoroughly their issues because you asked them all kinds of questions about the company, the department based on your hypothesis. They told you what their problems are, what they need you to do right away, 6 months down the road, who you're going to be working with, all those questions. You've surfaced any objections. Now you're going to influence the outcome. So, who writes thank you letters? Okay, I don't want you to write thank you letters anymore. Okay? I want you to write influence letters. Okay, it's a whole different mindset. It's not about thank you so much, I really appreciate it. You know, it's not about that. It was more like it was a pleasure talking with you. I left our meeting feeling very enthused about the opportunity, and I really believe I can add a lot of value based on what we discussed. And then you get into it. It's different. It's different from thank you. Okay? You can say thank you if you want. Sure, I don't care. But it's not about thank you. And you don't have to. The word thank you doesn't even have to appear in this letter. It really is about, here's how I can help you. I really enjoy meeting with you, and I think I can help you. Do whatever it takes to get the job, to get, after the interview. Write a proposal if you have to. Do whatever it takes. Let me give you an example.
How long should you wait to write that?
As quickly as possible. Do it as quickly as possible. I mean, I would say the next day, or, I wouldn't do it maybe the same day just because it's good to look at something the next day. Write it the same day and then look at it the next morning and say, whoa, I was going to send this? A lot of times with a fresh mind, you see things. So I always say the next day, or maybe the day after, or even the day after that. You know what? Even a week later. You want to do it the sooner the better, but it's better to send it late than not to send it at all. Okay? Because they'll remember if you send it sooner, and their decision making, it's all fresh. Yeah?
If you interviewed with, say, 3 or 4 people, does the letter have to be different? Or?
That's a great question. So if you're interviewing with 3 or 4 people, does the letter have to be different? Ideally, yes. Now you've got to weigh your time versus, like if you have a panel, like I think in your case, you're saying you're meeting with 13 people, you're not going to send 13 different letters. You might send it to one and copy everybody.
Yes.
Okay? If you're meeting with 3 people and you don't see a lot of difference in terms of if you meet with them all together and they're kind of asking the same thing, maybe you don't send a different one. It depends. But ideally, you want to customize the influence letter to their unique issues. Every person has different issues. So if you're meeting with your boss, I'm going to make up something like, say you're in marketing and you're going to meet with your boss in marketing. You're meeting with the hiring manager in marketing. So they're going to know, are you a good marketer? Now you're meeting with the sales team. You're meeting with you're in marketing, you're meeting with the sales team. They're going to know, can this person give me what I need to sell? You're meeting with IT. Is this person going to make difficult demands on me to build systems for marketing, right? They all have different needs and different hypotheses, right? If you're meeting with your boss's boss, they're going to have a more strategic thing. They're going to be bigger. Like, can you work with lots of different departments and give a strategic sense? So each person that you meet with is going to have a little bit of a different need. So you want to customize that influence letter to their unique needs. Everybody wants to know, how can you help? So the answer to how can you help me might be different for each person you meet. That's why you might want to customize it. Sometimes it's not practical, so you got to weigh too. Okay, yes?
Can the letter be sent via email as an attachment?
Yes, it should be an email and shouldn't be an attachment. It should be the body of the email. Send it right away as an email, so it gets there quickly. Everybody reads email. It's the language of business. Okay? It's in the body of the email, not an attachment. People don't like to open attachments. Okay? Subject line, great talking with you yesterday about the X position. So you want to write an influence letter, right? Don't write a thank you letter unless they did you a favor. You know, an influence letter is personal. It addresses things you forgot to bring up, things you didn't do justice to. It addresses objections they raised. It conveys your intention to follow up, okay? And often it's more important than the interview itself, because the interview is where you're getting information. The influence letter is like essentially where you're making a sale. Again, think about it from a consultant point of view. You go to the meeting as a consultant, you make the sale. I mean, you get the information, and in the proposal, you make the sale, okay? Do whatever it takes to overcome their objections. We talked about this. Okay, let me give you a couple of examples. Now, you have these. This is one of my clients, all right? So this is what happened with my client, okay? So she was going for a position as a sales manager of salespeople, director, sales team director in for-profit education. And she met with a bunch of people. Great meeting, a love fest, right? Everything was wonderful. And then the last person she met with was the executive vice president, the number 2 person in the organization. Great meeting. Then at the end she said, do you have any issues with my candidacy? He said, well, frankly, yes. Oh, really? I thought we just had a great meeting. Yeah, you don't have the analytic experience. I don't see that anywhere in your resume, in any of the conversations. We really need someone to be able to get into the numbers to help steer the sales team. And I don't see that in your background. She was surprised. She said, you know what, I'll address that. She didn't even address it in the meeting. She was so surprised by it. So, we got together. We said, all right, let's write this influence letter. So we wrote this influence letter. Okay, she sent this influence letter to George. It says Steve, whatever. She, okay. Thank you for setting up the meeting, blah, 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 right? It was a pleasure meeting you all, right? Everything else in this influence letter is about her analytic ability. It was all about her analysis, right? I left with a clearer picture. So now she's saying, well, now I understand that you need analysis. I understand that you need to do measurement techniques, you know. I offer superior analytic ability. I know from my own experience that you only succeed at what you measure, right? That's interesting to have that perspective, right? I understand the importance of data analysis. I realize this was not poured out in my resume. Therefore, I'd like to demonstrate my ability in this area. If you're amenable, I propose that I analyze some of the department's spreadsheets containing sales data, and I'll present my findings to you. I'm happy to sign any confidentiality agreement, or feel free to alter the numbers if necessary. Okay. So she sent this. She didn't hear a thing from the guy. Not one response for a week. She figured, all right, not interested. Go back to the drawing board. Okay? A week later, he sent a 3-word message. Okay, here. Maybe that's a 2-word message. Okay, here. Okay? And attached to that message was a spreadsheet with a bunch of sales data. So now she had a 3-day weekend. He then sent it on a Friday. He took those 3 days, brought in, analyzed all the data, came up with some conclusions, had other people look it over, sent it Monday night. Here's the results. Here are the results, and I'd like to meet with you to discuss these results. So this is really important because she didn't just say, here are the results. She said, I want to meet with you. I'm going to get on your calendar to meet with you. If you do the work, you need to go be proactive about getting the meeting. This is about not just this situation, but throughout your job search. You need to take the initiative. You need to maintain control. Don't expect they're going to get back to you, okay? So she set up the meeting. She got on his calendar, went back into the meeting room with him. He didn't even bring up the sales data. He didn't even bring up the analysis. They just had a nice chat about the direction of the school and the organization and where it's going. Wonderful meeting again. And now she asked those same 2 questions. Do you have any issues with my candidacy? Frankly, no. You have no issues with your candidacy. You're great. Really like you. Well, how do I measure up against the other people you're seeing? Oh, you know what? You're one of the top 3. All of a sudden, now she's one of the top 3. She was totally out in the first round. Now she's one of the top 3. But there's another guy that we're interviewing who's done exactly this job before. So why should we hire you? He's done exactly this, and he's really good. So she wrote another influence letter. This one. Right here, the other side of the page. Number 2. Right? she talked about in this influence letter, yes, she hasn't done exactly this job, but she has a unique competitive advantage that no other person has. Nobody could possibly have. She has this asset that nobody else has. And she talked about that. She says, you know, she's really able to release each person's unique talents into performance. That's her competitive advantage. And she talked about that at length. She gave examples of it. She gave examples in this letter. And she sent this letter and she got the job. Okay? So that's what you can do. Now let me show you another example. This last letter here, another influence letter example. This is a more conventional example. I just included this because they said that they mentioned this letter as one of the key decision factors in their hiring by clients. Okay, it was this letter because what he did was he clearly articulated that he heard what they needed, how he can help them with what they needed. He said, here's what you said you needed, here's how I can help you with what you needed. He used subtitles, right? He said, you said you needed someone who can be proactive in generating incremental revenue. You need someone who can attain quota. You need someone who can get things done in a large, newly merged organization. Each of those things, he addressed them specifically and said, here's how I can help you. And he used specific examples. He didn't just say, I'm good at this. He said, I'm good at this, and I've done it before. Here are the results. It's like telling a story. He's telling stories in here. Okay? I sold $240,000 worth of enterprise software, right? He's giving the specifics. So you can use this as a template too, okay, for your influence letter. Yeah.
Excuse me, I have a question.
Sure.
Okay, this letter one, but after the interview, so meaning in the interview nothing was really analyzed. None of these 1, 2, 3, 4 subjects. Correct?
In the interview, they said, you're great. We have no issues with your candidacy. I think they were early on in the interview process, so we really couldn't get a sense of how he measures up against the competition. Which actually is just on a side note, try to be later in the interview process so they have a sense of how you compare with other people, and you can ask that question and get a good answer. Plus, they'll have a better idea of what they want in this role after they've talked to some people. Okay, but to answer your question, they said, no, you're fine, you're great. The influence letter helped, though. He clearly demonstrated that he heard what they needed and he reinforced that he can help them. And I think one of the things involved something he really forgot to bring up, like this $240,000 worth of enterprise software. He forgot to bring up, or maybe he didn't emphasize it, so he made sure they knew about it here. So that's what this was, okay? So just to end, because we're really about, I think we're just about at 8:30. So a couple of things. First of all, I'm going to be back here in July talking about a little bit more about salary negotiation, your first 90 days on the job, and the six keys to success on the job. I have a weekly webinar course I'm in the midst of. You can go to my website and sign up for it. Next week we're talking about resumes and pitches. That means you can view my screen and hear what I'm saying, either using your phone or the computer speakers. That's what a webinar is. My book, I have a few copies here if you're interested. I'll just leave a few here. They're $10. You can buy them or not, whatever you want, I don't care. And you can sign up, and I will email you the slides if you want to. But thank you very much. I appreciate your thoughtful questions, and I hope to see you at other seminars. And good luck. Thank you.